Hey everyone, it's Podpocalypse. Today we are going to go over a couple of likes and dislikes about the 2024 model year TX300. We just hit the 54-hour mark today, and we're going to go over some things that I love about it, some things that I like about it, and then some improvements to be made that you can do yourself, along with some gotchas to look out for. So right off the bat, it's been a big talking point since the 2023s came out. The fueling is completely different for this generation of bike. Fuel injected still, but it's now throttle body instead of transfer port. I actually put 300 hours on a TPI bike, so I have a ton of experience with that, and going to TBI has been quite the ride. The TPIs I found to be a lot easier to ride. The TBIs apparently don't reach the same horsepower, especially on the trail edition models. You'll go online and hear mixed reviews on how their throttle response is and how much power they have, like the XCW and the TE. The TBI throttle response gets you into the torque and horsepower a lot faster, regardless of the peak horsepower and torque. And if you ride one, you'll know what I mean. I will say it is the best fueled motorcycle stock that I've ever been on. Nothing even comes close to it. There is a bit of a downside to TBI, which is that because the fueling is all the way back here into the reed valve, I find that you don't get that instant fuel in the cylinder, which allows for fast startups and then reduces flame out. The TBIs flame out a tiny bit easier than the TPIs. All this TBI nonsense is getting a little confusing. The fueling is amazing, and I have zero regrets getting rid of my TPI to get this TBI. It's better in almost every way imaginable. There are some upgrades you can do from two-stroke performance. The ERM kit, I don't remember what it stands for, but essentially you can treat it like a carb and tune it, which I think is super cool, and I will be trying that very soon because there is a problem with the fueling. Your quarter throttle response on the TBIs is very gurgly because it is extremely rich down low, and then it leans out as you get higher into the RPM band. That is something that a lot of the aftermarket companies are going for. They are looking to make this even better than it already is. So I just said, it's the best fueling bike I've ever ridden stock. And guess what? Apparently you can make it better, which I don't even know what that's going to be like. Moving on to the tires, these are the AT82s. Check out the previous review I just did on those if you want. They'll be in the description. Here's the old tire. Not really impressed with the AT81. This is the second one that I've had. It came on my 22 and now my 24. They're not bad tires, just don't think they're good for the southern Utah terrain. Depending on the terrain you're in, you might have to immediately upgrade your tires to get that peak performance if that's something that really bothers you. Another thing I like about this bike, it's easy to work on. Everything's just super intuitive. If you want to tear this entire bike apart, you don't need that many tools in your carry-along kit if you choose to carry a kit. All right, now on to the biggest improvement of all of them. The 2024 redesigned closed cartridge, boom, exact fork. This is hands down the biggest upgrade over the previous generation of motorcycle, in my opinion, especially if you're just a casual kind of weekend trail rider. The closed cartridge forks that come on the 2024 TX are the best stock suspension that I've ever been on. On these forks, you get into the mid-stroke easier if you're the proper way. That's 160 to 180, I believe. And it also doesn't ever really bottom out. Okay, we're gonna wrap up the like section really fast with some zingers. I really like the positioning of the controls in general on KTMs. The clutch levers feel good, the brake levers feel good. The other thing I like about, speaking of the shifter, the gearbox on the 24s is way more responsive and I find rideable. With the 22, I found I was very aggressively shifting between second and third to get the torque that I wanted. With the 24s, I find that you can pick second or third, and then because of the throttle responsiveness and the way that it gets up into the RPM band a little bit faster than the TPIs, it's just a better experience. The other thing I like about it, the Airbox access is super nice. You rip this off, the Airbox is one little boop, and you pull it out, super nice. Bolts up here now on the 22s, it used to be in here under the Airbox cover, and it was not a deal breaker, but it was just kind of annoying to have to do that extra step. Minor like, but the stock exhaust is now a Shorty and it sounds really good. And then last but not least, the rider triangle on this bike is just amazing. There have been some complaints of a stiff frame, and now that I have the hours on it, it definitely has broken in, but I see what people mean. Especially if you hit any kind of gravelly, rocky corner and you're doing a turn, a sharp turn, you can just feel the deflection of the bike itself after you blow through the stroke on the front and the rear. The good news is the 2025s are apparently fixing that. They're making it a bit softer, so they heard everybody and they are improving it. All right, now on to the short list of dislikes. We had already gone over the tires. I wasn't the biggest fan of the front and rear tire, but that's not a deal breaker. On every KTM, one of my big dislikes is the stock grips. I think they are complete junk. Once you ride these Rogue V2s, I think that's the name, you just can't go back. These are so much more comfortable. You get so much more grip, especially if you're an enduro rider. You know, you're like, bleh, 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 slipping all over the place like a dummy. So yeah, grips. This has probably been one of the more popular first world problem upgrades that people do, is they go back to the old style of switch. For whatever reason, probably to save money, KTM switched to this all-in-one button on the right. Now people are going back to the kill switch or start on the left and the kill switch or start on the right, the one with the single kind of big button. That's been a popular mod that I've seen a lot of bike builds do. KTM continues to make the spark plug completely inaccessible without taking the gas tank off. Okay, we're probably now on the one thing that has driven me the most insane about this motorcycle, which is the D.I.D rear wheel. These spokes on this D.I.D come loose almost every single ride. It's obnoxious. All right, last but not least, we'll go over some things that are kind of mechanical failures and design flaws. One of the minor ones, I hope it will come up on the camera, but I actually had to wrap some electrical tape around this hydraulic line because it was rubbing, and a couple of guys have reported that it actually rubs through. So that's gonna be something you're gonna wanna watch out for. The other thing that's been kind of a bummer, I already hit this thing once. You can see it's kind of all bent and messed up. The chain guide / chain guard on the bottom continues to be a KTM weak point. Apparently they're changing that slightly for 2025 too, so you can look out for that. Another thing that's been a mechanical failure, probably the hottest item other than the pistons. This one was a bit weird, but people claimed that the skirts of the pistons were hitting the crank and blowing up. But it's because the squish band, I think, was very much out of spec. All right, I think we're on the last big ticket item. This is the one that has been the biggest kind of online storm of criticism and like, what the F, KTM, what are you doing? Which is the fuel tank. The fuel pump sits right here under the seat now. There is no pickup on the bottom anywhere. It's all designed so that when you're riding, you shake fuel up into this little catch in the back, and then that's how you feed your bike fuel. If you are riding on a flat road, fuel will get trapped here, or fuel will get trapped here on the lower side, and your fuel injection will actually run out of fuel to pick up, even though there's gas in the tank. Definitely the biggest mess up in terms of customer satisfaction that I've seen. So if that drives you nuts, there's some good news. It is pretty lame that you have to invest in something that was previously solved, but it is what it is right now. If you want to fix that, Takomoto is coming out with a solution. All right, I left what I believe to be the boring part for last. We're gonna go over the bike build specifically. So if you are buying a 2025 TBI, you can know the hot ticket items that I personally recommend, but do your own diligent research. Enduro Engineering front disc guard, and we got the bottom shock mount guard. The OD Rogues we previously talked about. We got our Bark Busters, Sicra Pro Bend. Enduro Engineering radiator guards, AXP full skid plate with linkage, a Cherbis swing arm guard, the Enduro Engineering rear disc guard, Spanish Fly Racing turbine core to make it USFS compliant. I ended up getting a new cap because I had a couple of instances on my 22 where if you smack the plastic one with a rock, you might break it. Oh, and I forgot one dislike. The radiator cap sucks. OEM fan for this bike, it will fit. However, this is extremely important to note. The cross-country bikes, XC, EX, TX, do not come with a wiring kit in the OEM setup anymore on the factory harness. So I bought this on eBay. This is just a super dumb connection that goes to the battery. If you are running the OEM battery, you might have to get an anti-gravity or something to support the fan. The alternator, or stator rather, on this bike only puts out 15 to 20 amps. It is not enough to run a headlight and is not enough to run the fan full time. We got a Tusk TPS guard, and then last but not least, the Mako 360. Okay, so let's say you're dirt poor in this garbage economy, but for some reason you can afford a motorcycle. What would you put on your bike? What is most important? If you were gonna buy a 2025 TBI, I would say these are the absolute, no questions asked things you should get to make sure you don't put yourself further in the hole. Absolutely no question on any motorcycle I ever own. Radiator guards, OD Rogue grips. Fatigue and exhaustion leads to crashes. Bark Busters. I cannot tell you how many levers I've broken when I've gone out without proper setups of Bark Busters. And then last but not least, any enduro off-road, riding over rocks, riding over lava rock, riding over sandstone, you want a heavy-duty skid plate with or without the linkage. That can kind of take it or leave it. I do highly recommend it because it lets you slide over obstacles easier. If I showed you the scrapes under this, you'd be like, whoa, dude, do you beat the crap out of your bike? And then lastly, the luxury item, I would say, if you can afford it, is the Mako 360. The only downside is they are expensive as crap. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. That was my 50-hour review of the TX 300 for 2024. Best bike I've ever ridden, my most favorite bike of all time.